Thank you very much, Bill, for being with us in this Congress, the first Global Contact Forum. How do you feel about it?
I'm very excited to be here. There's a lot of energy in the room, in the booths here with all the vendors and people walking around. I'm very excited to be here. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm.
Now, Bill, in terms of best practices, how would you define a best practice? You know, we're talking about best practices all across the globe, and I don't think there is a definition about it. So could you give us your perspective about it?
Sure. To me, best practice has to be focused exclusively on the expectations and demands of your own customers. In other words, there are some interesting, I would call interesting practices, what might be happening in other countries. But if your customers today are experiencing certain levels of support or interaction or sales from another company, then that forms the best practice for you to consider in your own organization. So my first definition of best practice is, what are the expectations of your own customers? And so we see things like they want to be able to get through quickly whenever they have an issue. They want to have a complete answer in the channel of their choice. In other words, if they tried the website, they want the website to work first and completely. If they call the call center first, they want the call center to be knowledgeable. So the third example of best practice from other companies is knowing the customer's history, purchase history, contact history, and really understand and get a sense of why they're contacting you again, whether to buy something or to complain about something. Practices from other countries, from other regions of the world are interesting to talk about things like staff ratios, training methodologies. For instance, online training is very successful now in the United States and will be even more popular everywhere around the world. And understanding multi-center routing, virtual clouds with IVR and other routing systems in the clouds. Those are all great practices and interesting practices from other markets in terms of the technology and the support.
Thank you very much. Now, this is the first time in Mexico, really, in Mexico City, at this event, right? So how do you feel about it? What have you seen so far?
Well, we're just a few hours into the event on the first day of 2 days, but what I'm sensing is that there's a lot of excitement about figuring out what to do for Mexico, what to do for the Latin American marketplace, which is obviously a key thing for a conference. But I also am sensing something, I think, deeper, which is a sense of what's really good for the customers. The customers are not just the companies that would be setting up operations here or have a contract for BPO, for example, but the end users. Let's call them the end users for a moment. What do the end users really need in terms of support and capabilities? So I think there's a lot of discussion going on. I see it right side of our room here in the trade booth area, that there's quite a bit of discussion going on already about how can we build this business and this business market in this part of the world, but how can we make customers more excited too.
Thank you very much. Now, talking about the future of the industry, what do you think it's going to be like? You know, probably in terms of the customer experience, probably going back to the basics. What do you think it's going to be like in this market?
Well, in terms of the future, I'd say maybe three things. Number one is that customer demand is going to be getting increased. Customers are less and less tolerant. They're less and less accepting of mistakes, problems, confusion, and so they're going to be much more demanding of companies for sales or for support. Number two, you're going to see the proliferation of much more web and cloud-based activity. Third-party websites that collect customer feedback, forums where customers can exchange ideas, forums where customers help customers. So you'll see that companies then need to understand and embrace and get involved in all these cloud and third-party forum web type activities. And thirdly, I think you're going to see a challenge on the supply side, on the people side. It's a tough job to work in a contact center and a call center. And so there's going to be a need to spend even more time on hiring the right people, training them completely and constantly, rewards, recognitions, the whole notion of holding on to your employees is better than finding new employees is the same thing that's been used over the years. Holding on to your customers is better than finding new customers. So I think the number 3 is going to be a big emphasis, even a bigger emphasis in the future, of focusing on staff and their satisfaction.
Perfect. And I just have one last question, and that would be, do you have any suggestions or any recommendations for all the call centers in Latin America mainly?
Well, I think the call centers in Latin America are growing very, very fast. I think the most important thing to focus on is quality. To make sure that there is a mechanism, an ongoing mechanism to give constant feedback on the quality of the interaction, whether it's on the phone or email or web, so that the whole region gets a reputation for great quality, because that will stand for a long time in the future.